Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Will the second part be more interesting? Tonight's part will decide everything. Enjoy the show! Shut up, Catherine, I said. You are a grown woman with common sense. You know that if you went to a party without your husband, you shouldn't have been drinking in the first damn place. A married woman should not find herself in such a situation. Like you told your mother, you weren't that drunk. You knew what was going on and decided to allow it because you thought Eric was boring. You even asked her if she thought you should try it again. You're really lucky because, like I said, Eric is mad at you, but he loves you. He'll probably scold you for a while, but since it only happened once and he doesn't know you're thinking about doing it again, he'll forgive you. But what you did was bad, and so am I. I hope you learned your lesson. I have, she said. Is it true this will never happen again? Over the past few days, I've realized what my life is like when Eric is angry with me. I never want to see what will happen if he leaves me. I thought I was a grown woman. Honey, I used to think that I loved Eric, but sitting there in that house with him refusing to talk to me, I realized how much I truly care about him. One of the reasons he's not interesting is because he's so damn tired of working all those hours to pay our bills. Well, I'm happy for you, honey, I said. But Daddy, what about Mommy? She asked. She also wants to improve the relationship between you. This is a different situation, I said. Your mother was not drunk. She cheated on me, and apparently had been doing so for years. She made a conscious effort to do this, and I just don't think I could ever trust her again. It would be better if we went our separate ways. Dad, she doesn't want this. She loves you, and honestly, I don't think she can handle it on her own. Katie, it's not my concern anymore. Her lover can take care of her from now on. I have nothing against her or them. I just don't want to be the third wheel in this love triangle anymore. Now, I have to get back to work. I hope that everything will work out for you and Eric, dear. 3 days later, I saw my wife for the next time. I looked at her across the long table in my lawyer's office. She was dressed for the meeting, her hair freshly styled, and she looked good. The years had hardly changed her. I noticed a few wrinkles on her face that I hadn't noticed before, but she was still as beautiful as ever. What are you looking at? She asked me. I was just wondering if you realize how beautiful you are, I said. And I'm just wondering how the hell I'm supposed to get over you now. You really don't have to, she smiled. Yes, I really should, I said. And it'll take a while, but I'll be okay eventually. Her face darkened. Mark, we need to stop this before it's too late. Mrs. Brown, we are here to discuss the divorce and decide how we will proceed, my lawyer said. We are here because your husband, rather than just sending you the paperwork, wanted to discuss the matter and give you the opportunity to decide how we would proceed. He has been very open and honest about everything, and I hope you can continue to do so in the same spirit of cooperation. Why should I? She asked sharply. I don't want a damn divorce. I love my husband, and we belong together. This is all stupid. I'll do everything I can to stop this from happening. My father-in-law told Lori to calm down. My lawyer presented her with 2 sets of documents. What is this? Asked Lori's father. There are 2 possible paths we can take, my lawyer said. Personally, I prefer a no contest, no fault divorce. It will move through court faster and cause less stress for all parties. On the other hand, if she doesn't want to settle, we'll go another route. My client may be willing to negotiate the settlement amount, but this is the only concession he is willing to make. But this is pure nonsense, said my father-in-law. He'll basically chase her out the door with just the clothes on her back and her car. She's been cheating on me for years, I said. She doesn't even want to say how old or with whom. Let him take care of her. Our marriage is over. I acted in good faith all this time. I loved her and never cheated on her. I loved you too and didn't cheat on you. She suddenly exclaimed, What the hell do you call that? You went off and had fun with another guy for years, and now you expect me to just... My lawyer nudged me, and I suddenly fell silent. I'm going to petition the court to order counseling, my father-in-law said. They clearly still have feelings for each other. This marriage can be saved, and there's no need to file a motion. My lawyer said, my client agrees to the consultation. He also agrees to pay for it. You can choose the consultant we use. No, I started. He silenced me with his gaze. But in case the counseling is unsuccessful, you need to decide which route we will take for the divorce, he said. Young lady, you understand that court records are public, right? He asked her. She looked at him as if she didn't understand what he meant. This means that all your neighbors and everyone in town will have access to the records and know why you got divorced. On the other hand, with a no-fault, no-contest divorce, you don't have to give a reason. You can tell your friends and neighbors whatever you want. Her face didn't change. Half the town will think you're a. To hell with the town, she said. I won't give up my husband without a fight. This is all wrong, said my father-in-law. Where do these records come from? He must have more money than that car he bought her. How the hell can he even afford car maintenance when he only makes $200 a week? They don't have children at home, my lawyer said. Most judges will only award child support for a certain period of time, let's say 4 years. 3, said my lawyer. This means that even though he owned the house before marriage, he will most likely keep it. He will probably only end up paying about $115,000, and it will be spread out over 3 years. How damn is that fair? How is it fair that I supported her and bought her everything she wanted for 25 years while she was sleeping with another man? I asked. I wanted someone I could love and who would love me back for life. I wasted my best years on a liar. I think she's leaving with a lot more than I got. I wanted someone I could grow old with, whom I could spoil with grandchildren. Instead, I received handouts from a temporary wife and a permanent cheater. Don't you see it, Dad? I put in this with the best intentions. We made vows in front of our families and friends, but only one of us was ready to comply with them. If this were a business, I could sue her for failure to comply with the terms of the contract, for fraud. The atmosphere in the room became increasingly tense, and Lori's tears began to flow. You don't understand that you got what you wanted, she cried. I love you, Mark. I always have. We could grow old together, the way you wanted, and we. No, I wanted it for both of us, I said, not for 3. We're not making any progress here, my lawyer said. I have come up with an alternative strategy. I must warn you about this, but I am not obliged to tell you what it is. In the absence of a solution from Mrs. Brown at the end of the consultation period, I will file for divorce on the grounds of infidelity. Please let me know until then if you change your mind, my lawyer said. Lori shook her head. Please contact me as soon as you find a therapist for consultation, he said. This should not take more than 3 days. I will inform my client to ensure he attends the sessions. Why can't I just tell him who the therapist is? Lori said. We will only see each other at sessions, I said. We won't talk to each other. Why not? She asked. My father said, you should come home after starting this. It doesn't make sense for you to stay in a hotel for the entire month while we're in counsel. We can sleep in separate rooms if you insist, but this is your home. That makes a lot of sense, I said. We are starting the divorce process. We are in a legal battle. I don't want to do or say anything that you could use against me in court. I have already arranged for another place to stay. Why are you doing this? She asked, with tears. You don't even want to try to fix our relationship. You want to throw away 25 years? Lori, you did all this yourself, I said. You threw away those years. I'm just trying to pull the pieces of my life out of the trash. Lori and her father had probably already agreed on a therapist. My lawyer called me less than an hour after I left his office to let me know when and where. He checked the woman out and said she seemed professional and had the right qualifications. Our first meeting was scheduled for the next evening. Lori seemed to truly believe that counseling would work wonders. The therapist was a large woman with huge glasses who seemed like a very kind person. She smiled a lot and radiated good feelings. Okay, she said. Let's start by arranging our chairs. You can sit anywhere, but try to do it in a way that allows us to communicate easily. I sat down on the chair, and when Lori moved her chair next to me, I just looked at her. Interesting, said the consultant. What's so interesting? I asked. I can usually tell a lot about where a couple sits, she said. In your case, I see that Mrs. Brown was the one who cheated. But strangely, after I saw this, I expected you to move your chair away from hers, but you didn't. I haven't figured out why yet. I shrugged. The first thing we need to figure out is why we are here and what we want to achieve. My hope is that you both leave here in better condition, regardless of any other outcome. Mrs. Brown, let's start with you. Why are you here and what do you want? I want to overturn my husband's decision to divorce and save our marriage, Lori quickly responded. And you, Mr. Brown? Asked the therapist. I'm here to expedite the process, I said. She looked at me with bewilderment. My lawyer knew they would insist on counseling, I said. If we waited until they found a judge and got permission, and the judge ordered counseling, I would still have to do it. The judge would probably want a longer period of sessions, and it would take 5 or 6 weeks for him to even make a decision. So, I cut the therapy down to 1 month and started it immediately. That means I'm saving almost 6 weeks and maybe another month of therapy. So by just agreeing to it instead of resisting it, I'm cutting back almost 3 months of time that I will have to endure all this. I will get my divorce even faster. So you automatically assume that your marriage cannot be saved? She asked. Sorry, but it can't be saved, I said. Let's start with you this time, Mr. B. Brown. Why did your marriage fail? The therapist asked. My wife cheated on me, so I don't want to be married to her anymore, I said. Do you agree with this, Mrs. Weck Brown? She asked. No, I don't agree, Lori said. He just doesn't understand the situation. I want to be his wife. I love him. The reason I don't understand the situation is because she doesn't say a damn thing about it, I snapped. I'm just not going to put up with this. I don't know how it started. I don't know when it started. I don't know who this guy is or even what I did or didn't do to make her start cheating on me. I did everything I could to be a good husband. And you were the best husband a woman could ask for, dear Mark. She suddenly began to cry. It didn't start. It just never ended. You didn't do anything wrong. You did everything right. I just owed him, and he just... What do you mean it never ended? I exploded. I stood up so quickly that the chair I was sitting on tipped over. I looked at her. It's Todd, isn't it? She burst into tears and started crying. The therapist tried to calm her down. I just shook my head. I turned and headed towards the door. Mr. Brown, where are you going? Asked the therapist. I don't need to be here anymore, I said calmly. I'm not upset or anything. I made sure you get paid for the entire term, but this case needs to be dismissed. I don't even want a divorce. What do you have in mind? Asked the therapist. When I first met Lori, she was in a relationship with a guy who was constantly cheating on her, I said. I just found out that she married me while still in that relationship. I didn't start an intimate relationship with her before we got married. She never seemed to stop sleeping with him. I'm okay with that. They knew each other and were a couple for a long time when I met her. The only thing I regret is that I supported her all these years. There are so many things that I need to get, I said. Which things? Asked the therapist. I am now sure that I need a DNA test for my daughter, I said. Some of her personality traits seem unusual to me for someone with my genes. But I also need my lawyer to do something completely different. I will sue Todd for his role in destroying my marriage. But if it turns out that Katie is his child, I will also sue him for all the expenses of raising her and everything else. But at least now, I can just ask the judge to give me an annulment or even annul the entire marriage on the ground of fraud. Lori married me and gave it to me, swearing under false pretenses. It should be pretty clear that Lori and Todd probably owe me at least several hundred. I didn't even look at Lori when I left the room. Maybe I should have. I went to my lawyer's office and told him everything that happened in therapy. He immediately got down to business, and then the real action began. Within 2 days, I became very popular and very unloved among many people. My father-in-law was furious, my mother-in-law was upset too, and my daughter was upset. Todd called threatening me, and some woman I had never met wanted to meet me. My father-in-law came to my office. "Damn it, Mark," he shouted. "What happened to you?" I fell in love and was betrayed," I said. "Forget it now." He said, "Lori is in the hospital. Do you care?" "Lori cheated on me for 25 years, I said. "She was never mine to begin with. I loved her with all my heart. My heart is broken. Aren't you sorry? I'm the victim here, so don't start complaining to me because Lori is upset. Lori started this whole thing. I'm probably not even Katie's father. Aren't you sorry?" "Trust me," he said. "Katie's your daughter." He sat down on the chair opposite me. "Do you have anything to drink here?" he asked. I shook my head. "Oh yeah, you don't drink," he said. "That's another thing I've always liked about you." "I didn't think you ever accepted me," I said. "Mark, don't be stupid," he said. "When I first met you, I was just shocked because everyone in our town expected Lori to marry Todd. I had heard that fairy tale for so long that I believed it too. But when I met you, I had to at least try to understand why the fairy tale went off the rails. When I saw what Todd had become, I was glad she was marrying you and not him. All I ever wanted was for my little girl to be happy. It took me less than an hour to realize that she is much happier with you than she ever was with him. Mark, if I had known for 1 second that she was going on with this, I would have made her stop," he said. "But despite your differences, I know 2 things. I know that my daughter really loves you, and I would bet that Katie is your daughter." I just looked at him. "Hell, you don't need a DNA test to figure this out," he said. "Todd is too stupid to be her father." I smiled a little and nodded. "It doesn't really matter who her biological father is," I said. "I raised her. I thought she had my values. No matter what I do, I can't bring back the memories and all the happiness that little girl brought me. So I have to rely on what I know. No, I'm a business person. I trade dollars and minds. So if Katie really turns out to be Todd's child, Todd will have to pay me for ruining my marriage. You just don't understand this, son," he said. "Todd didn't ruin a damn thing. You love Lori whether you want to admit it or not. Lori loves you. All the memories you two had created over the past 25 years were real. Todd simply pulled a scam on Lori and manipulated her using her guilt. The 2 of you have a beautiful home, a beloved daughter, and a wonderful life together. You also have each other. All Todd got from her was a few dollars, and he would call her once or twice a month, and they would have a night out of guilt. It doesn't matter if it was once or twice in a decade," I said. "It still wasn't right." "I agree," he said, "but there are degrees of right and wrong. Smart people understand that life is not always black and white. There's a lot of gray here. Hell, life is red, yellow, and a whole spectrum of colors. Just think about it. Meanwhile, your wife is in the hospital 25 years later. Isn't she worth a visit?" When I got ready to leave that evening, Katie was waiting for me. She sat in my car with tears streaming down her cheeks. "So I'm not your daughter, right?" she asked. "I'll take your damn test, but I've never even met this idiot. How could you think that I belong to him?" The next thing I know, she ran up and threw herself into my arms, crying her eyes out. "Katie, you will always be my baby, no matter what," I said. "This has nothing to do with you and me. It's just another way to make this idiot pay." "Dad, exactly how much is he going to pay?" she asked. I was so angry that I went and saw my mother and talked to her about all this. He is an old, fat, homeless man with a terrible character. He is married to a fat, old woman with bleached blonde hair. He had a regular job in life. He cheats on his wife and not only his mother. He has no children and never has with any of the women he has been with, according to his mother. She always forced him to wear a protection. I don't belong to him in any way. Then she looked at me. "What's the matter?" she asked. "What did I say, Katie?" "It's not you," I said. "Your mom and I never used the protections once we decided that all we needed was you. She started taking the pills, so her running around the store buying protections to use with him just proves that she made a conscious attempt to cheat on me. The more I hear, the more it hurts. Against my better judgment, I went to visit Lori in the hospital. She was hooked up to all sorts of devices, but she seemed wary when I entered the room. She looked at me, her face flushed and then went dark as darkness and anger colored her expression. "I guess you came to kick me while I'm down, huh?" she asked. "I can leave," I said. "Your father thought I should stop by." I sat on the edge of her bed and looked at her. "Why did they hook you up to all this stuff?" I asked. "When you left, I almost had a heart attack," she said quietly. It turned out to be a really bad panic attack, but my blood pressure went up so much that they were really worried I might have a stroke. "I've only loved 2 men in my entire life," she said. "Even though you keep calling me A. I have only ever had an intim with the same 2 men. So if I'm A, I'm probably not very good at it. I didn't cheat. This is not some grand plan to hurt or fool you. It's just a very strange situation. When I met you, you knew I was with Todd," she said. "You knew this and still followed me. I've never lied to you. Every damn time you asked me why I was with him when he treated me like crap, I was being truthful. I was with him because I loved him. I told you that every damn time. But you still came back, and every time you looked at me the way your eyes lit up when you saw me, it was magical, Mark. You made me feel so special. After some time, I realized that I love you. I also realized that I liked you, and just because I loved you too didn't mean I stopped loving Todd. But I liked you more. I hated the way Todd treated me, but I had loved him for so long that it wouldn't go away. And I wanted him to stop cheating and spend more time with me. But I couldn't stop loving him. We had our whole lives planned out before you came along, and the next moment I realized that I was cheating on him with you. Of course, we didn't have a night. We just kissed a lot. But if you ever insisted a little, we would have an intim, and you know it. You were too good a guy to push me." Then the dream collapsed. I was probably scared. My life was not going the way I wanted. I hated my life with Todd. I hated that crappy apartment, and he never stopped cheating on me. Mark, this hurts so much. When I was in college, if he cheated on me, which he always did, you made me feel better. That's why, Mark, I called you, and Mark, you've come. You came and saved me and treated me like a damn princess again. And I didn't lie, Mark. I've never lied to you. I really loved you, and I still love you. I will love you until my last breath. When I heard your stepmother say that you should marry me, I wanted you to ask me. And when you did this, I agreed not because I wanted to deceive you but because I loved you and I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you. I wanted to have a night with you, give birth to your children, grow old with you, and everything else that you also want. And Mark, I still want it with every fiber of my being. I want you, darling. Don't look at me like that. I can call you whatever I want, we're still married, she said sharply. I was really happy, Mark. I planned our wedding, and it was going to be the biggest and best wedding ever. Then he called me. He apologized and said he was going to seek help. He said he fell into depression and simply couldn't cope with the way his life had turned out. He was so disappointed that he couldn't become a professional athlete, it made him feel like he wasn't a man. He had one goal in life, one dream, and he failed. All other women were just his way of venting his emotions. But he was going to seek help, and we would be fine. Then my eyes hardened as she spoke. He wanted me to leave you and come back to him, she said. Mark, my heart broke for him. He was so apologetic and so remorseful. He tried so hard to put the pieces of his life back together. All my love for him came back. It didn't mean I loved you any less, it simply meant that I was back where I started. I was still torn between you two. I told him about you, and he got upset and hung up. But a few days later, he called me again and said he understood. He also said that since I fell in love with you while engaged to him, the least I could do was let him try to get me back, the same way I let you take me away from him. He kept calling me, and then we started seeing each other. And the next thing I knew, we were having intim. I didn't like it, and I need to tell you that I don't have a night with him because I like it. I do this out of guilt. I'm asking you for intimate, Mark, he begs me and makes me do it out of guilt. I probably should have realized I was wrong when he didn't seem to care that I was still going to marry you. He even seemed to like it. He even told me that if it was fair for you to take me away from him while you were supposed to be taking care of me for him, then it was fair for us to be in touch while I was married to you. I know it sounds stupid, but I really couldn't give up on either of you, Mark, and this was the easiest way to keep you both. And you have to understand that, although deep down, I always loved you more and liked you, I felt sorry for him. You have a wonderful life and a lot of good things. Todd was always unlucky. There were times when you gave me hundreds of dollars for shopping without even asking what I bought. Often, I would buy one dress, parade around in it for you before night, and give the rest of the money to Todd so he could buy food or pay rent. He had a way of placing even more blame on me. He said such terrible things, as he often told me I use people. I stayed with him as long as I thought he would become a rich professional athlete. But as soon as he failed, I left him. I tried to break up with him several times, but every time, he managed to blame me and force me to return. I know you think I had a night with him all the time, but I swear to you it was only once or twice a month, never more, and I always made him wear a protect. There was never a time when he didn't wear it. That's why you think your daughter could be his. It's funny, but please get the test results, and I want you to get them and then apologize to her. There's something else you need to know. After Katie was born, I ended all relationships with Todd. It was around that time that I learned what he really thought about me. She wiped her eyes. Mark, Todd never loved me from the very first day we met. He likes blondes, no matter what they look like. He only chose me because I was smart enough to help him get through high school and then college. Then he came back to me because I gave him your money. I felt like a fool. I went to his same lousy apartment and arrived earlier. I brought him money and hoped to just leave it at the door and leave. As I said, Katie was born a few months ago, and I didn't have any intimate relations with him while I was pregnant because he thought I looked like a whale. I heard him talking about me. Look, I'm only dealing with this because she makes us money, he said. She was never my type. He continued to describe me as stupid, overly emotional, and boring in bed. But he needed the money I brought to pay for their apartment, he reminded the other person. That he actually married her, not me. A few moments later, the door opened, and the same fat, toothless woman came out of the apartment. I was so shocked that I just stood there. She recognized me immediately and smiled at me as she passed by. I was still standing there, feeling stupid, when he walked out. For several weeks after that, I didn't take his calls or do anything. But then he started being rude. He started telling me that he would tell you what was going on if I didn't come, and after that, I had to go because I couldn't risk losing you, Mark. I love our life and our family too much to ever risk that. As the years passed, maybe having a night with him once a month didn't seem so bad. It was just intim, it wasn't what you and I did. I started to think of it as a tax. For every 10 or 12 times you make love to me, I have to give Todd some. Most days, I just lay there and thought about my shopping list. I usually went to see him while you were at work. Then I would go out and do my shopping. I guess even though I love you with all my heart and soul, there is still a small part of me that wasn't ready to give up on him either. So now you know everything, she said. I left her room and left her screaming at me to come back. 25 years is a long time, but I vaguely remembered where that lousy old building was. I wandered around and wasn't sure until I saw Todd, or what was left of him, sitting on the steps in front of the building. The years have not been kind to Todd. He was still huge, but he was fat now. I wondered how a man without a job could be so fat, but he was. I noticed something else. He walked with a limp and had spots on his arms and stomach. He was also dirty and unshaven, and damn, he had one of those little oxygen tanks that he rolled behind him. When I got out of the car, I called to him. He turned to me, and I saw a flash of recognition on his face. A woman stood next to him, looking puzzled. "How's our girl?" Todd smiled. I noticed several missing teeth in his mouth and rushed towards him. I hit him as hard as I could in his huge belly. All the air rushed out of him in one huge gasp, and he began to fall. As he fell, the tube from his oxygen tank became disconnected, and he began to gasp for air. I didn't care, I started kicking him. He made a sound with every blow. I think he tried to scream, but he didn't have enough air to do anything more than sound. Then everything went dark. When I came to, the paramedic was holding ammonia over my nose. I was handcuffed. Todd's wife knocked me out cold by hitting me on the back of my head with a 6-foot board from a rotting porch. The police pulled me to my feet. I told them I didn't need to go to the hospital, but one of them had to drive my Mustang to the police station. I told them that if my car was stolen or damaged, they would be responsible for it. They ended up handcuffing me to the steering wheel and letting me drive, while one of the cops drove with me on the way to the station. The policeman looked at me like I was worthless. "What type of person attacks a damn disabled diabetic?" he asked as I drove. I told him the whole story, including Todd's blackmail and his guilt over Lori. "Tell them that story, and you'll probably get away with it," he said. I called my lawyer, and 2 hours later, I was free without charges. The only thing I had to agree to was to talk to Lori. Once I told the DA the story, he agreed to the deal. I could have gotten a charge of simple assault instead of felony assault. My lawyer accused Todd of blackmailing Lori and extorting money from me through her. The district attorney said I would need evidence to charge me. My lawyer got Lori to admit it. Todd agreed to drop all charges if I dropped mine. This meant that I could not sue him for ruining my marriage. But then I realized that suing Todd was a waste of time and money. Todd had nothing, and in his condition, he wouldn't last more than a year or two. Lori agreed to help me in exchange for the chance to talk again when she left the hospital. They wanted to keep her for another week or so. I agreed and returned to my hut. Her father kept calling me to talk about calling off the divorce. He said that Lori was feeling better every day and was looking forward to our meeting. He saw Todd and reminded me that Todd was not a threat to me or my marriage. Lori actually called me from the hospital and asked if I could come back instead of waiting a week. When I entered her room again, she looked almost as good as she did in the lawyer's office. "Hello, honey," she said, smiling from ear to ear. "What are you so happy about?" I asked. "Well, I was able to help you," she said, "and secondly, you've seen Todd. He's not a threat to us. I also have interesting news for you about your daughter." She smiled. "She really is your daughter. Or as Maury Povich would say, in the case of 24-year-old Katie Brown, you are the father. So you see, everything will work out well for us." "I'd like to believe it," I said. "Yes, you helped me, but to get your help, I had to agree to this conversation with you, Lori. For these 25 years, I gave you everything you ever wanted, no questions asked. When I needed help, everything, only in one matter, and it didn't cost you anything. You blackmailed me to get it. As for Todd as a threat, you didn't notice 2 things. First, I love you with all my heart. When you feel like that, find out from your wife that a small part of her heart still belongs to another man, painfully so. If the man was blind, crippled, and crazy, he would still be a threat. And through it all, you still haven't done the only thing that could convince me the opposite. You still never told me that it was over with him. You still never really told me that it was all over with him." Her mouth opened in surprise. "One last thing about Katie. I always knew she was my daughter. I just wanted to shock her into acting like it. She has both of our genetic traits. She has my ability to reflect and learn from my mistakes. But I had to shock her because she relied on your ability to be cunning and justify actions like a dam." But she sobbed. "You also helped me more than you know when you repeated your tragic story about Todd and our shared history to the DA to drop the charges against me. It was made public record. That means I can use it to get my decision for fraud against you and end this marriage. You have some time before our case starts, but you should probably start packing up your things from my house." The signals on her machine began to fluctuate, and the lines on the monitor began to jump. I wished her a good day and left. 3 weeks later, I was leaning against the railing on a cruise ship. The ship was huge, and as I looked down at the surface of the water, I felt sick. I've always been a little afraid of heights. I didn't consider it a weakness or a flaw, I just thought it was common sense to be a little wary of something that could kill you. I still had a week left on my 2-week Caribbean cruise. There was a chill in the air that morning, so I pulled on a sweatshirt over a t-shirt. It was a sweatshirt I got from the Woodward Dream Cruise the year before. It featured a GT 500 from Team Shelby. My phone rang, and I looked at the screen. At first, I was surprised that someone from home could call so early, but then I remembered that we were in a different time zone. Hell, it was almost noon in Illinois. My brothers both grumbled when they called me every hour or so during work hours to ask me the most basic and stupid questions. What's the point of being on vacation if they call me every 5 minutes? Lori's number was blocked, so she couldn't call me if she wanted to. My lawyer also called me to give me details about how the case was going, but fortunately, he limited his calls to once per day. I felt someone tug at my sleeve and turned around, but didn't see anyone. I turned back to the ocean lapping past the ship far below. That's pretty rude, I heard from behind me. I turned and this time looked down and also behind me. At 5 feet 10 inches, I'm far from a giant, but I was almost a foot taller than her. All I saw were waves of wild red curls. She was probably no taller than 4 feet 11 inches. She had the face of a cherub framed by all that wild red hair. Freckles danced on both cheeks. They did not so much obscure her beauty as add to her charm. I saw plump lips under the largest green eyes. "Are you going to jump?" she asked. "Hell no," I replied sharply. "Why the hell are you asking me such a thing?" "I just thought if you're going to jump, I want this t-shirt," she said. "Don't worry, I'm not judging." I thought a lot about jumping myself. "That would be the worst possible way to die," I said. "Falling into the water from that height would be like falling on concrete. You have all sorts of internal injuries, and then you'd freeze to death and drown." "Thanks for the encouraging words," she laughed. "If I go back to my depression, I'll find another way to end it." "What would make someone like you feel depressed, let alone think about?" I began. "What do you mean someone like me?" she asked. "Listen, I've heard every joke about little people, and I don't need to wait," I said. "I didn't say anything about you being small." "Then what the hell are you talking about?" she asked. "You're quite nice," I said wearily. "What do you mean, pretty nice?" she said, now smiling. I was afraid to say it. I didn't want you to rip my head off or try to start something. "Is this going to turn into a conversation?" she asked. "Because if that's the case, you should either come inside and have breakfast with me or give me this t-shirt. I'm cold." Her manner had changed. Her face became even more beautiful with a slight dissatisfaction. I extended my hand to her, and she gently took it. As soon as we boarded the ship, we ordered breakfast from one of the countless restaurants on board. "Emily Anderson," she introduced herself, extending her small hand to me as we sat down. "Mark Brown," I replied. We spent the morning exchanging tragic stories of our lives. She fell in love with a guy in high school. They got married and lived together for 18 years. She came home from work and found him in bed with her cousin. They talked, and she learned that after the first few years, he realized that her small stature, her small proportions, and the fact that they didn't have children made him want to move on. He had been ready to separate for many years but could not tell her about it. She also learned that 2 of her cousin's children were his. She divorced him so the family could be together. As much as it hurt her, they all remained on good terms. When they broke up, her ex won a cruise ticket from a radio station and gave her the ticket. She had no idea what she would do next. She planned to just get in the car and drive until she found a place where she fit. She could not return to Tennessee. It would be too humiliating. I told her my tragic story. She said. By the time we finished talking and eating, the sun was high in the sky and it was warm. "What are you going to do today?" I asked her. "You know," she smiled. "Go to the movies, that sort of thing." "Let's sit on the deck a little longer," I suggested. "I know we just met, but I like talking to you. I like your accent and your spirit, Mark." "I like you too," she said. "But in case you haven't noticed, I'm a redhead. I'm real, I don't tan, I just flash and burn. Can I meet you after the sun goes down?" "I don't want to wait that long," I said. "I can do things indoors too," she smiled, and I was captivated. We spent the rest of the week inseparable, except when we slept. We discussed everything we could think of. I think I even offered her a job once, but what I really remember is the last day we were together. We started kissing. I knew it was wrong because I was still married to Lori, but kissing her was so exciting. I don't think it was because we barely knew each other. I'm also sure it wasn't because I was, at least technically, cheating. Her lips tasted like freshly picked cherries, and I just didn't want to stop. I intended it to be a tender, romantic kiss, but she had other ideas. She grabbed the back of my head and started devouring my lips. She wrapped her arms around my neck, then jumped up and wrapped her legs around my waist without breaking our kiss. "Bed," she ordered, but I began to. "Hell with the details," she hissed. "Live in the moment. What will happen?" Okay, and it happened. It happened again and again. We spent our last day at sea in my cabin. Late afternoon, I woke up from a nap to find her cuddled up against me, nestled in my arms. I tried to move my hand, and her hands instantly reached out and pulled her back towards me. We eventually got up and went to dinner, then walked around the deck. The strangest thing was that we didn't talk much. We communicated with glances and small gestures as if we had been together forever. "I've never done this before," she said. "Wow, you learn very quickly," I admired. She hit my hand with her small fist. "I've had a night before, you fool," she sneered. I was married for 18 years before I found out I wasn't cute. But my burst of laughter interrupted her. She brushed her mane of wild red curls away from her face and showed me the fire in those green eyes. "Who said you're not nicely?" I asked, then I grabbed her and kissed her again. "That's it," she said. "I'm 38 years old, and my 13-year-old niece has bigger breasts than me, so. Can I finish?" She looked at me with fire in her eyes but a smile on her lips. "Anyway, I've never done anything like this before. There was never any romance. All those kisses and caresses you did made me feel nicely for the first time, and I felt loved. I feel ready to go out and fight and rest in peace now, so I just wanted to say thank you," I said in shock. "That sounds like goodbye." "It's not like that, darling," she said. "I was married for a long time to a man who loved me but never had passion for me. I'm stuck in a small town in Tennessee. I want to get out and see something new. That's what I wanted from the beginning." My face fell. I couldn't believe I met this amazing woman who made me completely forget about Lori within a week. She had effortlessly lifted me from the depths of despair to new heights, and now she was about to leave. She lifted her chin for me to kiss her as a tear rolled down her cheek. A flash of anger passed through me. I wondered if I should even kiss her after all. We didn't know each other that well. I wondered if I should even want this. How could I resist another kiss from a stranger? Should the anxiety go away, but if I must abstain, will I not be the same as a jealous dog from this day forward? It may be too long, but crossing the border would be so wrong. And you're right, she didn't give me time to decide. She grabbed me again and took what she wanted. I grabbed her small butt and pulled her close to me. "Oh no, cowboy," she said. "We won't have a night so soon, but I promise you'll get your chance." But I started this time. She silenced me with a kiss. "I don't know how to say goodbye," she said, "so don't even look for me in the morning. Just remember me and move on with your life." She kissed me again and walked over to my closet. "I'm taking back my t-shirt to remember you," she chuckled, and then she left. The next day was full of bustle and travel for me. I turned on the phone and started returning calls to my lawyer, my daughter, and my brothers, all of whom were angry at me for disappearing for a week. When I returned home, I went straight to work. My brothers, who by that time could not stand each other, left without a word. My older brother, a teacher, told me that my other brother was an idiot. He didn't elaborate, he just left. When my writer brother left, he told me that I needed to train someone to replace me and run the place in my absence because he wouldn't do it anymore. I later learned from my secretary that my brothers didn't actually do anything in my absence. They each managed to sleep with our receptionist, which led to them quarreling with each other into the fact that they began to block each other's path. My secretary eventually fired the receptionist, who had only worked for us for a short time, but it was too late. My brothers were too busy arguing to keep up with work. We each sent messages to each other's wives about the incidents, and it looks like all three of us will soon be single, like our father before us. I spoke with a lawyer and learned that the judge, although sympathetic to my claim, refused to annul my marriage on the grounds of fraud. On the other hand, he would definitely grant me a divorce if we could agree on a reasonable settlement. My lawyer negotiated with Lori's father for over a week, but they couldn't come to an agreement because my father-in-law was just stalling until I got back and Lori could talk to me again. The last thing that happened was my lawyer got Lori to move out of my house in exchange for his promise that I would meet her immediately upon my return. I went to see her at her little house as agreed. "I'm here," I said, looking at her. "What do you want to talk about?" "The same thing I always want to talk about," she said. Over the next 30 minutes, she gave every argument she could think of to explain why her many infidelities never hurt me. She said that I was completely wrong and that the only reason I objected to her relationship with Todd was jealousy, and I had no reason for that. Why was it okay to spend most of my time with you when I was engaged to him, but not okay to spend a little time with a sick person now that I'm with you? She asked. "It's your ego, pure and simple," I said. "It was okay for you to share with me when I was his, but you can't share anything." Then she made her final argument. "Mark, I've always loved you both," she said. "Maybe you treated me better, but that's because you could. You have money and all the other advantages. I can't leave him when he's sick, Mark. He won't live 5 years. Most of the time he can't even get up. Lately, we haven't even been able to have an intim." I smiled. "Oh, you think it's funny that the poor man can't get up?" she began. I shook my head. "No," I said. "I just realized a few things that cruise I gotta take with you did wonders for me. I learned to put things in perspective. For a long time, I felt bad that our marriage wasn't working. I guess it's because I loved you so much that I thought you were the only woman in the world for me. During our divorce, I was tormented by one thing, but I couldn't understand it until I just realized it." "What is this?" she asked. "All this time I tried to compromise and negotiate when I didn't have to. You didn't try at all. For someone who supposedly wanted to try to save our marriage, you weren't willing to do the only thing necessary, or to even give us a chance. You're still dating him, aren't you? You're still trying to have an intimate with him. You can't give him up, can you?" I asked, laughing. "Just like I couldn't give up on you in college when I thought he was going to go pro," she said. I shrugged. "You don't have to," I said. She smiled hearing this. "What about divorce?" she asked. "To hell with it," I said. I was spending so much money on legal fees that it just wasn't worth it. "I can't wait for you to come home," she exclaimed. "Yeah, tell that to Todd," I said. When she approached and reached for me, I dodged and turned to leave. "Mark, what's wrong?" she said. "I wanted a kiss." "Kiss Todd," I said. "You have no reason to be jealous," she said. "I'm not jealous," I said. "I don't care what you do or who you do it with anymore." "But you won," she said. "You'll end up staying with me." "Who said this is a victory?" I asked. "Then why refuse the divorce?" she asked. "Because a wise woman recently made me realize that life is too short for nonsense, and I need to live in the moment. Just because I gave up on divorce doesn't mean I can't find my happiness. Just because we're legally married doesn't mean we should live together or have something in common. In the end, I really won. I kicked you out of my house. Now all I need is to find someone who makes me happy and move in with me." She didn't know what to say. She just stood there with her mouth open. "I wish you and Todd happiness," I said. "Say hi to him for me." I talked to Eric on the way out. I explained to him that I wanted him to come work for me. I would like to take a break sometimes, and having someone who could take care of everything for me would be nice. I asked him to stop by the plant so we could discuss this in more detail after he had considered the proposal. After that, I received several angry voicemails. Some were from Lori's parents, a couple from Todd, and one from Lori, who called from my daughter's phone. Lori's father was upset because my decision to refuse the divorce meant that Lori would get nothing from me. I didn't have to pay her anything, and I cut off her access to all my accounts. This literally meant that her father had to support her again. Lori's mother was also upset because her adult, almost 50-year-old daughter had to move in with them again. All of Lori's complaining and crying was getting on their nerves. Todd had become accustomed to the money he received from Lori, and now he no longer had any money. Lori was so angry that she just cursed at me on the phone. Apparently, several things happened that made her angry. She found out that none of her credit cards were working. She decided to return to our house after an argument with her mother and discovered that the locks had been changed. Finally, as she turned our conversation over in her head, she realized that I was talking about the woman who gave me advice. Over the next few days, I focused on work. I got the company's production in order. To relax a little for peace of mind, I tried to avoid places where Lori might be. It was Saturday evening, and I was washing my car when she showed up. The Mustang isn't that big of a car, but it felt huge when she stepped out of it. "Wash mine next," she said, smiling at me. She was still wearing the sweatshirt she had taken from me 8 days ago. "What, you?" I began. "How are you? You told me your whole life. Did you think I wasn't listening? You even told me the name of your business and the city you live in. Well, it's actually more like a town. You didn't tell me you had a Mustang. You didn't say what you had either," I said. "Why do you think I wanted this t-shirt?" she grinned. "So why are you here?" I asked. I was still a little hurt about her saying goodbye. "I didn't just stop by," she said. "I will stay." "I thought you wanted to see the world," I said. "I thought so too," she smiled, moving closer to me. When we separated for 6 hours, I realized that I had made a mistake. I started a big argument in my head. On the one hand, I had just gotten out of a very bad, very long relationship. I was afraid to enter into a new one. On the other hand, another part of my brain said, "You made me feel better in a week than Levy did in 18 years, and that was worth exploring." By the time she finished that sentence, she was rubbing herself against me. Then I had another argument. On the one hand, I thought, "You never told me that you loved me or wanted a relationship with me, although you told me that I was quite nice." I also somehow reasoned that it seemed like you thought I was handsome. On the other hand, I felt like you should know how I felt about you, and you felt it, because you obviously didn't want me to leave. I think you were a little hurt when I left, but I already told you that I just don't know how to say goodbye. So I just decided to come here and see what you think about it. By then, she had already hugged me. "I have an opening for a receptionist," I said. She kissed me, and I tasted the cherry again. "But you can't have it," I said. "Why?" she asked. "If I looked at you all day, I would never be able to work," I said. "Well, I guess I should move on, then," she said. "If you try to leave me again, there will be trouble," I said between kisses. "Well, I'm not one for trouble," she said, wrapping her small arms around me. "I need to tell you something," I said. "I already know," she said. "No, Emily, this is serious," I said. "I'm quite serious about you," she said. "I didn't realize it until you left." "I called off the divorce," I said. Her eyes widened. She got up and sat on the wet hood of my car. "After everything she did to you," she said. The judge refused to consider the deception. He agreed to a divorce if we could agree on compensation. I began. "Mark, write her a check," she said. "Life is too short." "Too exactly," I said. I explained the game Lori was playing and why I called off the divorce. "So she doesn't live with you anymore?" she asked. "No, you live now," I said. "Aren't you just doing this because you still want her?" she asked. "I forgot about her the day I met you," I said. "That's enough for me," she said. Emily and I picked up where we left off on the ship. From that day, we never parted. She even came to the factory when she missed me, which happened quite often. She gradually won over all the people in my life. My secretary was the first to be won over by her, soon followed by Eric, who accepted the job offer. From rumors about her through Eric, my daughter came to my house ready to hate her at first sight. They became friends almost instantly. Katie warned me that Lori knew about Emily and was very upset. I knew a storm was coming when Lori's father arrived and demanded a meeting. Is it true that some girl lives with you? He asked. I simply nodded. Is it true that she's a teenager? He asked. I started laughing. No, Dad, I laughed. She's 38 years old. She's just pretty small. Does she understand that you are married and that she is preventing you from improving your relationship with your wife? He asked. She's not the type who marries a man but continues to date her university boyfriend, I replied sharply. She's not the type who can't let him go even with a 25-year marriage on the line. She's the kind who puts the man who cheated on her multiple times over the years and who admitted he only wanted her for my money above of his own husband. So between the two of them, I like her better. I gave Lori all the time in the world to decide what to do. In the end, she couldn't give up on him, so I gave up on her and moved on. She wouldn't give me a divorce, so I had to make do without it. Luckily, I found someone who wanted me enough to take me as I am. We are happy, and that's the most important thing. But what about Lori? He asked. She loves you. She's unhappy without you, she said. She's fine, I said. I saw her just a week ago in Todd's neighborhood. She just can't let him go. She made her choice, and I made mine. A few days later, the inevitable meeting took place. I wish I could have been there to see it, but Amy told me everything. It was a nice day, and Emily was on the deck under our large awning, shielding herself from the scorching sun. She was reading a book, wearing a swim top and shorts. She heard someone knocking on the fence. You can come in through the garage, it's open, she shouted, thinking it was one of the neighbors. She raised her head again and saw a woman looking at her angrily. So, you're the ex, huh? Emily smiled. Get out of my house, Lori screamed. Last time I checked, this was Mark's house, Emily replied calmly, but he calls it our home, so I guess it's my home, in a way. You lost the right to call it your home when you started having fun with your ex-boyfriend. Lori was shocked. She didn't expect Emily to know so much about her. My daughter and my son-in-law think you're a good person, Lori tried a different tactic. Good women don't live with married men. They move on when they love them. And when men are married, only because their exes won't give them a divorce, Emily replied. Lori, you can't have them both. You made your choice a long time ago. Let Mark go. He'll give you more money. I'll try to take care of it. I don't want money, you stupid, Lori screamed. I want my husband back. You can't bring him back, Emily said calmly. That ship has already sailed. You made your choice, now live with it. What I can't understand is why Mark clearly loved you. You had a beautiful daughter. Why did you choose a man who felt nothing for you instead of someone who loved you as much as Mark? Honestly, Lori said, I don't know myself. I should have given up on Todd a long time ago, but I couldn't. Even when Mark found out, I was still trying to figure out a way to have them both. I guess I love Mark, but I feel bad for Todd. Mark was your husband, Lori. You should never have put anyone before him. When you got married, he became your priority, Emily said. He was my priority, Lori hissed, but I still had a life outside of our marriage. I'm a grown woman. I can have friends, and Mark doesn't get to choose my friends. I was his wife, not his slave. I shouldn't jump when he says jump. You don't have to anymore, Emily said. But at least we know where we stand. And I love him enough to not deny him anything. If he doesn't like one of my friends, that friend will leave. But I bet he feels the same way about me. He probably felt the same way about you. What do you mean, felt? Laughed Lori. Mark has loved me most of his damn life. I can have him back anytime. All I have to do is call him. This whole thing between us is just an argument over one issue. As soon as one of us gives in, it's over, and we'll be together again. I just wanted to warn you, I wouldn't settle if I were you. I hope you haven't unpacked everything yet because you'll have to pack your things soon, I said. When I got home that evening, Amy told me everything. We had a quiet dinner and went to bed, but not to sleep. When we woke up yesterday morning, I decided we should get away for a while, so I took us to our cabin. She liked it here. She liked the lake and the shady forest around it, the fresh air and bird song inspired us, and we were very energetic in bed. The weekend was going to be great until Lori called. I hoped the phone call didn't wake Emily when Lori kept berating me on the phone about how much she still loved me, and repeating over and over again that she was finally over a relationship with Todd. I repeated to her once again, "Forget it, Lori," I said. "It's over between us." "But I told him it was over," she said. "I told him it was final. I told him goodbye, and I told you, Lori, it's too late to say goodbye." I turned off the phone and put all thoughts about my ex-wife and divorces aside. I returned to bed, where I belonged, and wrapped the blanket tighter around myself and the little redhead who now shared not only my bed but also my heart. She purred, making it clear that she wasn't quite awake yet. "Are you going to seduce me again whenever I get the chance?" I said. "What do you think of our second half of the story?" "I think the second part was much more interesting and detailed than the first. What do you think? Write in the comments. See you in the comments.